Hello. Okay, it works. Great. I'm thankful we're not in New York, although it was pretty windy this morning. Welcome to the Digital Music Panel. I'm Gene Stout, longtime pop music critic for the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, and currently a freelance writer and news partner for the Seattle Times, which also carries my blog, genestout.com, on its arts and entertainment pages. I'm honored here by the cast of experts we have. By the way, can you hear me okay? It's been an ever-changing group, but we have Alex Kochan of AEG Live and James Keblas of the City Film and Music panel, and Joe Rodriguez of DIY Media. And we have Ben London, who has been with the Recording Academy. At the end, I'm going to allow about 10, 15 minutes for audience questions. And we're gonna talk about making money in the music industry today, which is very challenging. In fact, with luck, you'll walk out of here with cash in your pockets. But seriously, it is a challenging time, and these guys have some interesting perspectives on it. The core topic here is a discussion of how to make money out of music in the age of digital sharing, online streaming, digital video, concert projections, and so forth. Just a few more words about our panelists. Alex Kochan is the Northwest Regional Vice President of AEG Live. The regional office was established in 2006. AEG Live, of course, operates the two Showbox nightclubs. WAMU Theater produces the Puyallup Fair concert series and more than 300 shows a year for the region. Joe is the product and operations manager for DIY Media, a social marketing and e-commerce company based in Seattle. DIY Media works with entertainment companies, big brands, and digital agencies to create interactive social apps that increase engagement metrics and amplify earned media reach on network campaigns. James, if you'd like to add a little bit about your personal background.
Or Joe and Alex. I could talk to you guys. My name is James Keblas. I run what's called the Office of Film and Music. It's a city agency here in the city of Seattle. And I try to succinctly say, my job is to make Seattle a great place to make a living making film and music. So that's our challenge. We're an economic development agency trying to create the environment for musicians and others to succeed.
Ben, what about you?
Sure. I'm Ben London, and I'm a longtime professional musician here in Seattle. Made records for independents and major labels. I was an executive with the Grammys for about 6 years, up until a couple years ago. I was on the team that developed and built Experience Music Project, and I presently work in the computer industry.
Thanks, Ben. Let's start with the core questions again. Can the traditional avenues of albums, live performances, and rock publications transcend the digital revolution? How has the world changed for musicians? What is required of them to succeed in the digital age? Alex has I'd like to ask you about the recent Macklemore concert. Seattle rapper, tremendous following. He attracted 7,500 people to WAMU Theater recently, October 12th, I believe it was. And it's a fascinating phenomenon, and it sort of cuts right to the chase here in terms of what we're talking about.
Well, yes, and we've talked about this before, and Macklemore just burst on the scene in a big way with the sale of 7,500 tickets at WAMU. But he really has been an artist that has been very involved and a first user and an early adopter of the web and the social media. And he's on Instagram. He tweets. He's been involved in communicating with a growing fan base for a long time. And what I would say that happens with Macklemore can happen with a lot of musicians. What distinguishes Macklemore from maybe many of them are that he's very authentic. I mean, he is not a put-on. He's not pretending to be somebody else. He doesn't have a persona. And I think that in what we see now developing, where my point of view is that the audience really is the final say. They're the ones that are the kingmakers. They're the ones that are going to either make or break a career, obviously with an artist cooperating, but that they respond to something that they perceive as being authentic. And when he communicates with them, they get that. They totally get that, and they get it in a big way. And I just wanted to point out that he's got a song, Jimmy Iovine, and I was looking at the lyrics, and it's kind of funny because the song is all about going to a record label in Los Angeles and finding, that he expects it to sort of be a beautiful place and a lot of energy and music there, and he walks in and it's like a morgue, basically. It's like everything is dead, and he gets the same experience with the president of the label that maybe in Pink Floyd's song "Have a Cigar." It's like here we are 45 years later, and the impression about the big label is that you're going to take what I have, and you're going to make all the money, and basically I'm going to be left with, I won't say what he says at the end, but essentially it's X-rated, and he decided that he wanted to be a starving artist at the end of this song, rather than get, which is what the label would do to him. And that's a stand. He's making a stand for what he believes in. And I think as an artist makes a stand for what he believes in and goes forward with that and communicates that to his fan base, that fan base will grow. And I think that what we saw here in Seattle will expand around the country, and he's doing it without a major record label.
Right. Well, I just want to jump in here for a second. I mean, I think that in so many of these discussions and so many of these kind of conference settings, whether we're talking about music or technology or whatever, is we spend a lot of time talking about the delivery methods of this stuff, and you were saying that he was good at social media and things like that. I mean, Macklemore was doing music for a good couple years before he connected with Ryan Lewis, and there was something about their partnership that started making a content that was compelling, that people wanted to hear about in these different things. And so I just want to say that I think the root of any conversation we're going to have about content, whether it's music or anything else, is that it has to be 100% compelling. You can send something, there's long histories of people trying to sell music to people that they put a lot of money behind, but if people don't like it, they're not going to buy it or listen to it. And so I think in this instance, the fact that he can sell 7,500 tickets here in Seattle, probably could have done a second night and done another 4,000 or 5,000 or something like that.
Yeah, and he'll get bigger the next time around. But you're right, compelling.
Yeah.
He has a compelling story, and he's authentic, and he delivers that not only in his live performance, which, back to your question, Gene, will certainly continue. I mean, live performances are not going to go away because we experience music in a different delivery system, either through the web or through other devices that are non-live.
It just reminds me, like, back in the day when the music industry was more of a straight line model where you made a record and they put it on a truck and they carried it to a store and you bought it there. That people used to say, well, if I could just get signed by a label, then I'm going to become a star. That everybody's going to hear my music, they're going to know how great I am. And now everybody's like, if I can just get all my social media figured out, as if the content doesn't matter. And I'm going to be a broken record on this. Totally. It's that we talk about the music industry's broken, people aren't making money, this, that, and the other thing. Every year for the last 5 years while this transition has been going on, at least 10 artists have emerged that have turned into big acts. And they've done it because the music's great and people like it.
By the way, Ben has to leave about 2:50, so if he stomps out suddenly, he's not pissed off.
Or I'm going to try and get pissed simultaneously, so I have to stomp
right.
out.
Make it look
Yeah.
like that. Joe, you look like you were ready to jump in there.
Well, yeah. I mean, the one thing about Macklemore that I would say is, I mean, the 7,500 people that were at that show, I mean, there was a lot of buildup, not just to the show, but I mean, with the song Same Love. And that video he put out, and Sub Pop helping put out the 7-inch, and, you know, it being about, you know, approving R74, that had a lot, I think, also to do with it. I mean, he would sell a lot of shows, but that whole campaign around that song really got a lot of people who'd never even heard of Macklemore to check him out, and really, you know, enthralled them to go to the show because he was authentic. He does support, he came out and basically said, you know, I support gay marriage, and, you know, and here's my reasons why. And a lot of artists some artists would avoid that because they don't want to annoy a niche or a fan base that they think they may have. And I mean, he just threw caution to the wind. And I think that has a lot to do with it as well. I mean, as everybody was saying, authenticity is huge in the music industry. Developing a niche is huge because, you know, if you don't have a goal set of, you know, if you go out there and you say, I want to make this hit record, I want to be like Lady Gaga, well then, you know, I hate to say it, you know, damn it, you better well be good, you better well have good content, and you got to work your ass off. But if you set goals saying, you know, I want to, you know, sell records regionally or, you know, become like the next Jonathan Colton or something like that, you know, make goals measurable. And I think that's what I see, you know, what I've seen with a lot of labels or musicians and artists that I've talked to before. It's like they all have these grandiose goals. And it's like, well, what's your fan base? And they don't have one. And so, you know, I mean, authenticity and developing the niche is, I think, the first step for anybody.
James, I know you're a big advocate of music education, and you've done a lot in that regard. What's your perspective on that phenomenon, Macklemore, and just helping artists to connect with larger audiences?
Well, I agree with everything the panelists said. Authenticity is king. I think that works well for places like Seattle as well. I think these smaller markets, I mean, the model that everyone talks about that is broken is that LA, New York model. And so if you aren't in LA or New York, that broken model doesn't matter because you were never part of that model to begin with. And I think Seattle reflects that. I think Seattle's always been that independent place. I think it's been the kind of thing where we've had to be authentic anyway, and we've made our success by being authentic. And so that is, now that the streamlined approach that the music industry used to have is no longer holding everything else back the way it used to, that there's much more opportunities for artists like Macklemore. I mean, not only did he have this incredible sold-out show, he was '1 on iTunes for a few days. I mean, that's huge for an independent artist.
And debuted at '2 on the Billboard chart, selling like 74,000 copies in a week. So it's great.
I mean, that's huge. That's a big deal. And I see, from a Seattle perspective, many artists doing this. You know, the Fleet Foxes, Head and the Heart. I mean, they're out there making good stuff. They're making good records, and they're making a good living doing it. I think it ties into a whole network. And when I think of this town in particular and how it's kind of working, we have Microsoft with what they're doing with Xbox. We have Amazon with distribution. We have all these startups and tech companies here. We have KEXP. We have Rhapsody, all within 10 miles, 15 miles of each other. That's a huge music industry in of itself, and it's the future of that industry from the creation to the distribution. And I think that we all, getting to your education point, need to understand that better. And, you know, as young folks are coming up through and they want to make a career being a musician, or they want to make a career supporting music and being involved in it, understanding that you don't have to leave town to do that, and you can have all of the management and the systems in place and the video makers for whatever you want to do, and be a musician and do it here in Seattle or in Minneapolis or Atlanta or anywhere else.
Well, I mean, I think in some ways, yeah, I mean, you hit on a point, James, that in some ways, out of necessity, Seattle were early adopters to the kind of music business 2.0 already. And so the industry in some ways is bending much more towards what the standard has been here over the years than the other way around. And I mean, I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing that somebody like Macklemore, or, we talk about some of these sub-pop artists like Head and the Heart or the Shins or things like that over the years, that, they're competing head-to-head with labels, major labels that are putting a lot more money into the promotion of these artists, a lot more time, and they're, you look at the Billboard charts, and, there they are in week one selling the same amount. Now, maybe they're not playing the same game at radio. They're not, in top 40, because that's one of the last bastions where the major labels really still have a stranglehold on the content that gets on there. But every now and then, I mean, even like not a local artist, but managed by local folks, the Lumineers right now, their song Hey Ho, it's just got added to top 40. And I mean, it can happen. And there's another independent release right there.
And they teamed up and getting distributed by Starbucks, which are also here because they're hanging out having coffee together. I mean, just kind of reinforces that.
I do think, though, that there's always the flip side. It's not all one and it's not all the other. The business, the industry is always looking to monetize the product being music. And musicians start off with that authentic approach where they want to communicate something. And somewhere in the middle of all of that clash, if you will, that tension between the creative and the commerce, good things can happen. Bad things can happen too. And mistakes can be made, and artists can point themselves in a direction of a certain kind of a career, define what success to them is, and either achieve it or not achieve it. But I think by and large, the industry or the business is always just simply looking to monetize. It is about the money. There is, of course, a spin in the business, which, we care about your career, and we care about a long-term career. Translation, we care about making money off of you for the long term. And the artist and their team have to be always aware that doesn't get co-opted, it doesn't get subverted, and that they stay on track and on focus with who they are, why they have a fan base in the first place, and that they keep that front and center.
I mean, I think that's something to think about a lot. And I'd ask you maybe, not for an example in terms of an artist name, but I mean, in your business, there must be artists you've worked with for, let's say, the last 5 or 7 years, had a great experience with them, but then their popularity starts to wane, and you're still wanting to do stuff with them, but you can't just you can't put them in the same 10,000-seat room or 5,000-seat room just because you like their music or you like them as a band. And you have to manage their expectations and answer to the people that you work for and all that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, and sometimes an artist reaches a level and their creative fuel just dries up. What they can do is they can go out and play a show where they perform what they created years ago, and they can just do that over and over and over. And some artists are really they make a lot of money being kind of traveling museum pieces where they play the record that they did 25 or 30 years ago. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's no one single definition of what success is for those artists. It's perfectly fine, and there are so many different levels that an artist can have a fan base at. How many people are going to get to the level that U2 had in Seattle, where they played to 65,000 people at Quest Field? That's an unusual occurrence, and it's not a level that anybody can get to. And U2 had to make choices and decisions, and their management team did, that put them in a position to do that. But without the music, that they created for all those 20 or 25 years, they never would have gotten there. Or without the ability to communicate that music in a large-scale setting with the right ingredients and the right production, they wouldn't have gotten there. There are many, many who try, and only a few that succeed.
Alex, of course, is dealing with established acts and up-and-coming acts. Joe, at DIY Media, what are the tools that musicians can use to advance their careers. I mean, there's a lot of state-of-the-art stuff out there that they can take advantage of to get to some higher level from where they are now. Getting back to the question about how to make a living in this business.
Well, I mean, I think the first, and I mean, foremost, I mean, you have to find the outlet for discovery of your music. I mean, you got to have the right tools. Like, anybody can get Pro Tools now and throw that on their computer. They can record through GarageBand. Mastering is not that expensive anymore. Some aren't even creating CDs. They're just going digital only. I mean, you have services or services like SoundCloud, which, they have like 14 million users now. Some of that is people like me who just like to go and discover the music. Others are, musicians, producers, people who are creating beats. It's a collaboration tool. So, I mean, that service is practically free. That's one way. I mean, the other way is like, if you have if you have a fan base or you have a group of people that you believe in what you do, I mean, you can do like a Kickstarter campaign or a Pledge Music campaign. You don't need to go and get the record label anymore to put out a record. And I mean, the cost of the album the cost to make the album is not as much as it used to be. So it's like, for 10 grand or 5 or 6 grand, through a Kickstarter campaign where you're giving people, some spiffs for fundraising at a certain level, you could put out an album. I mean, one of my friends from Alaska that I grew up with used a Kickstarter campaign to raise over $16,000 to record a jazz album in New York. And it was, friends that we grew up with to people she never even heard of that liked what she produced. I mean, there's services like ours, which once you have a finished product, I mean, you can use it to go direct to the fan through, social media, through websites, blogs, whatever. But I mean, there's so many, and that's the problem. There is so many. So it's like, where do you dedicate your time with using all these tools? You yourself as an artist should not be spending your time trying to figure out what tools I should be using as much as you should be spending time in the studio and writing good songs. If you spend all your time on social media, you spend all your time trying to figure out the tools, you're screwed because your art's going to suffer from that. Some of the best, independent artists I've seen that have been using, tools like Kickstarter and so forth, they have teams. There is no such thing as DIY. You will not be able to do it yourself. You have a team that friends or a team that surrounds you that helps you do it. Now, the thing is it has the concept that you're doing it yourself because you're not using the major record label for the promotions and marketing. You're not taking that money for the tour support. So in a sense, you still are doing it yourself, but there's no way you could possibly do it all by yourself.
I don't know. I think that these discussions are always kind of hard to have because there's so much ambition tied up with the music business, or any of the arts that, you sort of think, I love it, and it makes me feel so good to be a part of it and all those sorts of things. And I think in many ways that music has gotten to the point where it's kind of like athletics. Every kid in America grows up playing baseball or basketball or soccer or things like that, and they all dream about when they're that age about being a professional athlete. And somewhat of the difference between that is our bodies tell us who can play in the NBA some ways. Like if you're only 5 feet tall, maybe one person a year that's 5'2", Muggsy Bowl or whatever his name is, gets in. Everybody else, you're sort of like, well, I wanted to play in the NBA. I just at a certain point realized I wasn't fast enough, tall enough. All these sports happen. At this point, there's no cutoff with music. Everybody thinks that if they have a computer and they have a guitar and they have a song or a beat or whatever, that they can do it, and they're just one song away from being discovered. Sure, there's like the Muggsy Bowl exception once a year that somebody gets discovered out of their basement when they plugged something up and it went there. But for the most part, it's about creating compelling content that connects with people. And, I think that people ask, what's the most valuable tool I could get for my music? And this is a total asshole thing to say, but I'm going to say a mirror. Look in the mirror. There's nothing wrong with having a hobby that you love more than life itself. Or saying, this is a thing that brings me great joy, and I'm not going to make my living doing it, but what if I licensed a song to a TV show or did this or got to play shows or things like that? I'm not saying that as a dream killer. I'm just saying that, the whole point when we started this discussion, it was like, how are we going to tell people how to make money in the music business? That'd be like getting in a time machine and saying, how did people used to make money in the music business? There's a myth that anybody made money in the music business before. The labels made money. Some of the companies did, I'll say that. But the musicians themselves, very few. And I'd say that probably the certain number of people that are making a living now is probably not that far from the people that were making a living before. It's just the way it's being distributed and maybe their primary income source being more live and things like that. So. Yeah. I think that's my 2 cents, and then I'm going to storm off the stage. Like I said, I had to.
Drop the mic.
But yeah, exactly.
Jay?
I actually was really compelled by what Alex mentioned, and that is, defining what is success for you, because I think that's a really important conversation here, because when it gets to the celebrity of a band like U2, I don't care. That's something that's different, and that's not what I think is important. I mean, when I think of success, it's can I, as a musician, own a home and have a family and have health care and all those things that are kind of keeping me going. And if that's success, then identifying that and then kind of it's backwards engineer it so that you can figure out what you need to do to obtain that. And I've talked to labels and folks, and there are quite a few folks around town that actually make a living just playing music, and they do it in a variety of ways. And sure, they're not having their dream of I just have hit records all the time and that's all I have to do, but I have a pretty damn good job, and there's a portion of it I don't like. So there's, everybody has that. And so maybe you do have to do a little bit of, a scoring project here and there that you may not have wanted to do, or you sell something to a corporation that you may not be fully engaged with. Fine, you're doing it to pay your bills. It doesn't impact your art, then do it, and then sell your music, merchandise, go play on tour, add these things up. I was Jen Seisler at Sub Pop one time said, if you could sell 20,000 records or the equivalent of that, you can make a decent living making music. And then she kind of broke it down on how you kind of get to that. And it wasn't out of this world. I mean, it seemed like very tangible things. You bring some folks on, like you're talking about, Joe, and you go for it, and you make it happen. And then if it is really good, it will strike on its own. But regardless, you're going around making a living, making the music. And that setting that goal and defining what is success for yourself, I think, is the most critical tool to even start out with.
Oh, totally agree.
Yeah, some people will be absolutely driven to keep going further, and further, and to get to the level of U2. Yes, you do have to be driven. I've worked with a lot of, people who were exceptionally gifted, but they were also exceptionally driven, and they get to an extraordinary level of success, partly because of talent, but also mainly because they're driven to a level that ordinary people just aren't going to. They're not going to spend the time. They're not going to spend the energy. They're not going to be that focused on being able to drive their message, their talent, their music to another level, and that's great, and there's not a lot of room at the top for, well, I should say, there's plenty of room at the top for more people who do that. There's just not a lot of people who do it at that level, So, but all levels are really okay. It's sort of an inclusive. Music is so inclusive. It's a language that's worldwide, global, and it means something. To hear music means something individually different to everyone that hears something. Even if it's the same music, they respond in their own unique, individual way. And you can't tell me how I should listen to that or how I should feel if I listen to that. And that's part of the magic,
And the great irony is that in other businesses, or in many other businesses, if you follow the successful path that other people have taken, it often leads to success. And the sort of cultural mid-level, or what's the term of it, but basically what's popular in any given year is going to change 3 or 4 years from now. And so if you're building your model basing like, well, if Beyonce's really big right now and you have an artist and you're like, I've got this one that's just like the new Beyonce, she's like better. There already is a Beyonce. We don't need a second one.
I know. I've had many meetings with label executives where when I was a manager and walked into their office, and I managed the group Survivor. They had that hit Eye of the Tiger, and I was in the in the label president's office.
Thanks, man. A perfect exit.
Anyway,
you're now free to move about the cabin.
Let me just. The label president said, we gave him the new demos for the new album, the follow-up album. Again, it's X-rated. Can't tell you what he actually said, but essentially he slammed his hands down on the table as hard as he could, and said, "I don't give a." And what I want is another Eye of the Tiger. And it was just that simple, there was, and as a manager, I'm meant to communicate what the label wants back to the artist. And, so I leave the office and I think, there's no way I'm going to go back to the group and say, you have to now go and write another one of those songs. It's just one of those things, where did the group go? Maybe because they never wrote another one like that. They just disappeared off the scene. But I would suspect that they were just hooked up with a label that really didn't care. They didn't have any vision. They wouldn't let the group release the material that they had written in sincerity with authenticity, and they forced them into to be pigeonholed into a certain kind of an act, and the public knew that wasn't real, and they just dismissed them, for the next 2 or 3 records. So I don't know where that gets us.
Yeah, that's great. James, I want to ask you about the City of Music, but first I'm going to go to Joe. What about Lady Gaga's most recent album? She sold for 99 cents for, I don't remember how long a period of time that was, but it created a huge buzz for the new album. Not that she needs a buzz, but what can you say about promoting a brand versus selling an album? That was obviously her selling the brand.
Well, yeah, obviously, what she and her management pretty much kind of discovered is her brand is worth more, essentially, than that music that she produced. It was, in some ways, what was done there is what has been done for many years before. When you would put out a label would put out a CD, they would send it to the store. It would be discounted at such a rate that it just created the buzz, because they had radio promoting it 2 weeks before. You were hearing the single, and the buzz was there. And so instead of paying $19.99 for an album, you were paying $7.99 or $9.99 for that album. So the first week, it goes on sale, you increase sales, you become a platinum selling artist. Well, the same thing if you take it and you say, I'm going to sell my album for 99 cents. All I care about is that the number of units essentially has been sold. And so within a week, my album is now the #1 album. It's the same thing that's happened over many years. But with her, I think that, she's always been more of a brand. It's always been an image for Lady Gaga. And so, she's putting out a fragrance. She has, her tour is doing this. She's supporting different causes. Her putting her name toward anything at the moment kind of makes it golden. And so, the music is in some ways secondary for her, but she's she's mega selling pop star. You can't really do that when you're an independent, artist. You have to you want to keep your image. You want to, you have to operate like you're a brand in some ways, but at that level, it's totally different. Beyonce does the same thing. She has, You know, I mean, she has her fragrance, she has her causes. You know, Jay-Z, he started out, he made his living, you know, with music. He came from the independent side, worked his way up, you know, did executive stuff, you know, was with, I believe it was Def Jam for a while. You know, I mean, and then now it's like, you know, he's got his own management company, his own, he owns part of the Nets. I mean, he's all over the place, but that's his brand. And so, I mean, with Lady Gaga, it just was probably a decision to say, you know, my music's is not as important as much as my brand.
Do you think that Macklemore is developing a brand?
I don't think he's developing a brand. I think I think he's growing his niche. He's growing his market. I mean, independent, like, you know, independent underground hip hop has never been something that's gone, you know, mass market. But what he was able to do, and I think it is partially because of the song. Yeah, right. I mean, Same Love and the political, you know, environment we're in right now. I mean, you have, like, I think it's 5 states that are, you know, voting next week on gay marriage. I mean, that there just blew it up. And he you know, he's got a great marketing team, but it was like, you know, I think if you hit at the right time, you will grow your fan base. And I would be curious after this album, his next album, how many people he sells out, if he sells out to the venue again, if he's growing to get, you know, a bigger capacity venue, is he going to be selling more albums? And you know, that's the problem with the industry, is it's based off not what you did before, it's based off what you're doing now.
I was just thinking that, you know, an artist like Macklemore or any other artist, that so you sell so much more than just music to make it these days. And I feel like people, consumers, the audience want to know you, right? They feel like there shouldn't be any interference between you and them. And then therefore you, as an artist, have to develop you and your brand and let people in, and that's part of the new deal, right? Is that part of the new music model? Is that you can no longer just make great music, but you have to make music and have it represent you, and you have to represent that music, and then your music also represents your taste in something else, and that's used to maybe even be taboo in terms of selling out or something. That's gone. That no one thinks that's sell out material
no one cares
anymore.
about selling out anymore.
No, it's okay to be endorsed by a sneaker company, you know, or whatever. It's fine. So, I mean, it feels like to me that while I think Macklemore's is a little more, you know, there's a, you know, civil rights element to it and all these other things, there's still another part of it. It captures the spirit of what artists need to do to kind of grow audience.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think Macklemore will. I mean, he is becoming a brand, and I mean, he has to act like, you know, he's his own brand. The key is not to. I mean, if you're gonna, it's not like you're selling out, but you have to keep your persona. And I think that he'll do a great job doing that. I think that, you know, he has increased his brand image thanks to what he's done. I mean, even Ellen is, like, you know, promoted it and marketed it. Yeah, it's on tonight. You know, I mean, that's going to increase his brand. That's going to increase what he does with it after that is what I'm curious about.
Well, I think there's a danger, though, that you know, become celebrity and you become the brand, and then what happens is the brand managers, not necessarily his personal manager, but all those entities out there that are looking to monetize your career, you know, who don't really care about your music, don't really care what kind of, they don't care that what the quality of the relationship that you have with your fans and your audience. They just care that you have one. And so they're like out there on the hunt, like who's got one, you know, who's got a big fan base. Let's move in and let's exploit that. And as one becomes more of a brand and a bigger celebrity, and you play into that, it's easy. And I've seen this happen before. It's easy for an artist to just lose sight of their music and really just let that go. And you just can't emphasize enough that, you know, you can't let that go. That's always got to be number one, and staying true to that and being able to be authentic in your music is the key. I mean, it's the key to a long career. It's the key to a big fan base, and it will withstand even the onslaught of the industry coming in to exploit what it is that you have. And you could move into a interdependence of both the musician and the business to where everyone realizes you need each other. You definitely need each other. You can't do anything without each other. But there's sort of it's not a Cold War. It's a cooperative, interdependent situation, and there are a lot of artists who reach that point, but not without some scars. And the ones that have gone before that have really suffered, have maybe laid some template or some groundwork, some education for musicians that'll come later who will not fall into the same traps of having their copyrights stolen or not in a sense stolen, but give away your copyrights for bad deals. Billy Joel, I think of Billy Joel, sold his first 50 copyrights, first 100 copyrights for $50,000. Went to court many years later trying to recapture those under a lawsuit where he didn't have proper representation, or I don't remember exactly, but he lost. He lost repeatedly, and the guy he sold it to really just was making a fortune off of all of those songs without value added, without having anything to do but just cash the checks. So lots of artists have given away things. Maybe in the new technology, where we see is just an explosion of opportunities with digital delivery, and different methods of delivering the product, the music. There's so many different struggles for a musician to maintain and to retain their financial interest in the stuff that they create, and the forces of the business. They all identify themselves. I mean, Pandora is one of them. For all the good that it may represent and all the opportunity it may represent, yet I think there's a particularly evil, and I'll use the word evil, kind of, goal in that they want to reduce the payments that they make to musicians for the streaming service. And I think those are going to be the battlegrounds between the music and the business. We are in it right now, and what's fair compensation? What's value? On one hand, the musicians have an incredible opportunity for not only distribution, but contact and to make more people aware of their music. But I think the industry, the digital industry, has an obligation to make sure that musicians get paid for that, and they don't just essentially do what was done for 40 or 50 years, where, I mean, in the 50s, the guys that were writing the rock and roll, there were producers who had nothing to do with songwriting that would put their name on the song as the writer, and the guys that wrote the music would get nothing. Years later, there were lawsuits, about copyright theft, and it's just that, so musicians are owed a fair amount of money for what they produce, and they're certainly owed some consideration by the industry that's now going to capitalize and to monetize their work. So,
at this point, I'd like to call for questions from the audience. If people have anything they'd like to pose to the, and I'd still like to get to the Seattle City of Music and how that plays into all of this. Yes, go ahead.
There was a recent deal between Getty Images and SoundCloud, which lets people have their music on SoundCloud be licensed through Getty. Do you think this will have a noticeable effect on the industry?
I'll speak to that because, I mean, our office is also located next to another company called Audio Socket, which is very similar to Getty. The thing with the SoundCloud app and Getty is currently the way that Getty is set up, the agreement, you as an artist are giving Getty carte blanche to post your song anywhere. So you have no control over it. Once you've signed that agreement, Getty could put it in a car commercial, a beer commercial, a political ad that you don't support. You're screwed. I think that you will see other services pop up to compete that will offer, a little bit more, a better control over it. I think the other thing about the Getty app as it currently stands is it's not really an app. All you're saying is I want to have Getty do the music servicing, and then what it is the user the supervisor has to go to Getty and say, I want to license this song, and then Getty will get back to you 3 days later to say whether or not yes or no that's available. It needs to be instantaneous. It needs to be something where I want to license this song, I want to use it for user-generated stuff, or I want to use it for a commercial. Here's the price tag, boom, buy it, I got it, and I can start using it. The way it is right now, it's kind of archaic.
I just want to speak to that too. I think broadly, this is really good for musicians because it's another platform. And I think it speaks to what is happening for licensing music generally. And that is, it used to be in the interest of corporations to use megastars, right? All the known music, you put Led Zeppelin tracks on something and that sells it. In the current business, it's not that. Everybody can get anything they want at any time. So what is now the value for corporations in particular is what they can introduce you to that you've never heard before. So if they get credit for introducing you to something, you will then not only have new music you like, but then associate that brand with connecting you to that. And that is a really, really good asset for them. So you're seeing independent artists being licensed like never before and making pretty good money from it. And I think that this is, this lowers the overall paycheck, or maybe the singular paychecks, but maybe overall increases. But I do agree. I think it's a kind of a hoax in that it's not really this instantaneous service. And whoever does that first wins, by the way. So I think they have a long ways to go before it's really, really good. But overall, licensing, that is the model. Like licensing and the part of the brand, and I'm using brand in quotes because it's not traditional branding. It's branding as in niche and identifying and connecting with people is the way I would use it. Mm-hmm. But those are the two ways that artists and the music business live in the kind of now and beyond.
We have another question.
Yeah, so James, you talked about Seattle being this great technology place and also having musicians. And I was wondering if there's anything that you envisioned your office doing to bring together local musicians with the technology community in terms of providing that content. Because most of those technology companies that you mentioned, they really license their music through existing structures that are out there. And I'm just wondering whether there's anything in the works to kind of make a local music scene that's more supportive of the local musicians that involves the technology companies like Pandora and Microsoft and Amazon.
Well, this is a perfect segue.
Yeah, I bet it's perfect. Yes, thank you.
So the answer is yes, we are trying to do these things. So what we're talking about earlier with the City of Music is the City of Seattle is a great music town by many measurements. But we've kind of got here by accident. It was never intentional, like we're going to be a great music town. I'd almost say we were a great music town in spite of many efforts to try to kill it. So it was, the opportunity was in front of us to say, let's own this. Let's acknowledge that's an incredible industry that serves, 11,000 jobs and creates $1.2 billion in revenue and throws $90 million to local government's general fund. Get it at the table of economic development and let's do something with this. And that's what we call the City of Music. So we own that trademark. That's our thing here in the City of Seattle. And it's all around being a city of musicians, being a city of live music, and being a city of music business. and how those things are all together. We have a music commission that oversees that whole thing. Actually, Alex is on that commission, and it's built of all different kinds of tech folks and musicians themselves and venue owners and everyone else at kind of the subsector of the music business. And they're coming up with all kinds of policies to try to figure out how things are better. One thing that's actually coming out, mark your calendars for November 14th. The Chamber of Commerce is actually going to be getting involved in music in a really significant way here in this town, and it's going to be doing exactly what you're talking about. One great model, BECU, the credit union, they are one of the largest growing credit unions in the country, biggest in the west of the Mississippi stuff. As they've gone out and increased their membership and grown as a company, they've done it by doing local music. So they use local music in their advertising campaigns, and it's just worked well for them. So how can we take that model and connect it more to more activities that are taking place? And that's the kind of stuff that the Chamber is going to be helping with, in addition to other elements that we're trying to do as well.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Joe and Alex and Ben. I think we're out of time, are we, Chris? Okay. That was a quick hour. Thank you all, and onward and upward.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief.